Antonio Romanucci, attorney, the lead attorney from Romanucci and Blandin, that's leading the group effort to serve the family of Renee Nicole Good, who was killed by federal agents last week in Minneapolis. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
How did you all become connected with this family? How did they know to reach out to you all? How did that connection happen?
Well, I think they recognized us from the Floyd case in Minneapolis from years ago. And, we do represent other individuals from across the country that have been seriously injured by police officers or killed. And they thought that we could be some of the best representatives for them.
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to your familiarity with the Minneapolis area in just a bit when it comes to the Floyd case. But what was your reaction to what took place in Minneapolis last week that resulted in Miss Good's death?
Well, certainly when I first heard about it, I think we were all shocked at what happened. I mean, basically what we see happening is an invasion in Minneapolis by our own federal government. Thousands of ICE officers have now basically blitzed into the city, flooded the zone, whatever you want to call it. And, people are getting detained and innocent people now are getting killed as a result of this mission that our federal government has, which is supposed to be capturing the worst of the worst. Renee was not that. She was one of the good ones. She was one of the best ones. She should not have been caught up in this at all, and instead ICE officers killed her.
There have been varying views on what exactly led to the shots being fired. As you know, at this point in time, what happened?
Well, what we know happened, obviously, many of us have seen the video, and I want to emphasize that reaching a judgment or a verdict on this case is not fair until we have all of the evidence. We don't agree with the federal government coming out and reaching a conclusion and telling the public what happened without knowing all the facts. But what we see happening is that a federal officer, a law enforcement officer, put himself in front of a vehicle, which we know is not a reasonable police practice. The only option that we see that he was left with when he placed himself near or close to that vehicle was to use deadly force because he felt that car then to be a threat. Had he placed himself, given himself enough time, distance, had there been clear verbal commands made, there would have been plenty of opportunity to de-escalate this situation as opposed to escalating it from 0 to 100, and the only option being use deadly force is his side duty weapon being the one that killed Renee.
There have been a lot of questions about the tactical position that he was in as to whether he put himself there or whether Renee backing up and then moving forward, then he ended up in front of that vehicle, which one happened. What has her family been through over this last week?
Well, I mean, you can only imagine that they are just suffering right now greatly. This has been very painful for them because, Renee she was a mother, she was a daughter, she was a sister, a committed partner, she was an animal lover, she was a member of the PTA. She had many roles in her life, and none of them were the roles that the government said that she was right after this shooting occurred. So you can imagine her life being taken away in a split second, and not having her, not having had the chance to say goodbye, not having a chance to mourn anything, and her children. So they are suffering greatly over this because Renee was mostly about peace. She's the one who promoted the most love in the family, and to have her gone is a big void to fill.
What is it like for them to, hear the federal government say it's her fault?
Well, it's exactly what we're talking about. That's why it's so painful, because rather than the federal government saying, we are going to open up a civil rights investigation. We will investigate this. We will be transparent. We will determine whether or not there were constitutional violations. We will look at the totality of the circumstances. They reach a conclusion without any facts. And what do? They blame the victim here. They blame the dead person who can't even respond to what they are saying. That's what's unfair, and that's what's so painful.
So what are you seeking?
Well, of course, we're always seeking justice. And it's easy to say that, but it's very hard to achieve. In order to do that, we have to get accountability. And how do we get accountability? By gathering evidence. And by gathering evidence, we can be transparent about what it is that we gather and hopefully reach some sort of understanding, piece together like a puzzle what happened, and then maybe we can reach a better judgment or a verdict in this case, which is what we hope to get to. We want to be able for a judge to hear this case and determine it based on the facts, not on hyperbole or rhetoric.
Which is hard with a case that is so public as this is. Does that help or hurt your case that it is widely viewed and there are opinions all over the country on it?
Well, there's no hiding the fact, and I was in Minneapolis, I was in Minnesota, that this is a very volatile, combustible, not only case, but we're talking about a city that's on edge. As I said earlier, there's an invasion here. And of course, people are going to try to stop the invasion. They need to understand why. And that's what we hope to be able to do, which the government hasn't said that they're willing to do by being transparent or sharing or cooperating in any other investigations.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, there have been several federal attorneys who have stepped down. I think it's like 6 of them who all stepped down just this week. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, the timing of that, I don't think is coincidental. I mean, there was certainly a basis behind that. And my rationale is, look, we all have rules to follow in life, whether it's to stop at a red light or whether we have rules in our own home. Federal prosecutors have rules too. They're sworn to abide by the Constitution, and they all know that whether it's their job or not to prosecute criminals, the first thing you need in order to do that are facts. You need someone to investigate in order to bring them the facts to determine whether or not a crime has been committed. And for them to see that blanketly, to state that we're not going to do a civil rights investigation because it's not necessary, they know that's wrong. Those aren't the rules of engagement. We are not in a battlefield across another world here right now. We're in our American streets, and American rules and regulations need to be followed. We have a constitution here.
When you talk about a civil rights investigation, let's circle back now to your law firm being involved in one of the largest, most memorable cases there in Minneapolis in recent years, and that would be George Floyd. Tell me, in getting this phone call, how your mind went back to that.
Well, it brought back a flood of emotions, and I'm going to tell you something that not many people know. When we went back to Minneapolis, I went to go visit the George Floyd Square. I went to go visit the memorial because it brought back a lot of emotions. It brought back, a lot of thoughts that I had about Minneapolis and what we did there, and how much change came about as a result of what happened to George Floyd. And now I'm trying to figure out, we need to weave and piece together how we can make those same kinds of change for the good of Minneapolis for what happened to Renee Good.
What did you learn from representing the Floyd family that you bring into this case?
Well, I mean, certainly, the approach that we took when we began our representation of the Floyd family is that we approached the case like we had never approached any other case before. We knew that the playbook for investigating civil cases had to be tossed, and we had to start anew, because we knew at the time that this was one of the biggest civil rights cases that maybe not the country but the world had seen. Now, when you look at Renee's case, well, we're taking that same approach, except we're dealing now not with local policing, Minneapolis, but our federal government. So this is uncharted territory. When's the last time that anybody can remember in recent memory, if even history, where there has been an invasion of one of our American cities by a federal government? So there is no playbook here. We are beginning anew. We are creating it as we go along, because we know that this is such a unique and important case, not only to this family, but also to the country.
And does it feel like that, for lack of a better way of putting it, like a cloud just continues to sit over the city of Minneapolis? I mean, given the fact that you've been a part of these two major cases now out of that same city.
Well, certainly I hope it's not a cloud, because I hope it's just, bad timing. But what I can say is this: I can feel that the city is on edge, and we don't want anything to happen where it explodes or gets any worse. We want peace. I heard Mayor Fry and Governor Walz last night in their press conference, and I heard them tell the people of the city of Minneapolis, do not take the bait. That's what some people in Washington, D.C. want, is the bait, so that they can even send in more troops and maybe declare something that would be even worse for the city of Minneapolis. So let's make sure that we dissipate this cloud, get this ice out of Minneapolis, and get these people back to living their lives as they're accustomed to.
How does this generation of everyone having their phones out, recording everything, change you all's cases? Because that is a major piece of both this case that you're in now and also the Floyd case.
Oh, of course. I mean, look, if there wasn't that cell phone video in the Floyd case, I can say it, and maybe people don't believe me, but listen to what Chief Arredondo said after that cell phone video was released, when he gave an interview on national TV. And he said, had it not been for that cell phone video, our community may never have known the truth. So the cell phone video cannot be understated in its importance when it comes to policing, for good or bad. I mean, many times cell phone video exculpates the police officers. Mm-hmm. Many more times that it inculpates them. So yes, it is critically important to both sides.
And let me ask you this: when people see your name on this, do we know? Do we even have an expectation of how long this case could play out? What a timeline looks like? What you actually do? Walk us through that. Like, what happens after you get the phone call? What happens? How long does it take?
Well, the timeline, of course, I don't know. I wish I had that crystal ball, but it could be somewhat extensive. Patients, lawyers are some of the most patient people on the planet, because when you say that I'll see you in court in 2 years or 3 years, for us, that's not a lot of time. For the clients that we represent, it's an eternity. But in order for us to get it right, because we only get one chance, we don't get a do-over. There's not another take that we can do here. This is not a movie set. In order for us to do it right, we need the time. And we need what's called the discovery, which are all the documents or the interviews behind the facts, so that we can put this piece of the puzzle together in a courtroom. So it could take some time. Obviously, we don't want to waste time, but we want to make sure that we do it in as little time with the best evidence possible.
Antonio Romanucci of Romanucci and Blandin, thank you so much for your time today. Please keep us updated.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Thanks for watching Fox 32 Chicago. Subscribe now for the stories that matter and never miss what's next.